Howdy folks, Felix here. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that one part of our mission is to promote other content creators that are keeping the public domain alive. The interview series used to be called Creator Spotlight, but now it'll be known as the Free IP Fandom. To kick this reboot off, here's a re-upload of my interview with Catfish Franklin, which was originally posted in late April of 2022. As usual, I'd like to begin with a song.
My name is Frank Taylor, a bachelor I am. I'm keeping an old batch on the Milligan clan. You'll find me out west in the county of Lane, a starving to death on a government claim. Oh, out in Lane County, the land of the free, the home of the bedbug, grasshopper, and flea. I'll sing of her praises and boast of her fame, a starving to death on a government plane. My clothes, they are ragged, my language is rough, my bread is case-hardened and solid and tough, but I have a good time and live at my ease on common soft sorghum and old bacon grease. How happy am I when I crawl into bed, the rattlesnakes rattling just under my head, and the gay little bedbug so cheerful and bright, he keeps me going 2/3 of the night. How happy am I on my government claim, I've nothing to lose and I've nothing to gain, I've nothing to eat and I've nothing to wear, and nothing from nothing is honest and fair. Oh, come to Wayne County, there's room for you all, where the winds never stop and the rain never falls. So join in the chorus and sing of her fame, a starving to death on a government claim. Oh, don't be downhearted, you poor hungry men, we're just as free as the pigs in the pen. Just stick to your homestead and fight with your fleas, and pray to your maker to send some more breeze. Oh, all you poor sinners, I hope you will stay and chaw on your hardtack till you're toothless and gray. But as for myself, I don't aim to remain enslaved like a dog on no government claim. Farewell to Wayne County, the pride of the West. I'm headed back east to the gal I love best. I'll stop in Missouri and get me a wife and live on corn dodgers for the rest of my life.
The song you just heard was Starving to Death on a Government Claim, a traditional folk song performed by friend of the show Catfish Franklin. The song was written after the passing of the Homestead Act of 1862 during the Civil War, and it allowed common people to claim several acres of land for as little as $10, or about $276 in today's money. The catch was that the claimants had to live on the land for 5 years before gaining ownership, which led to the hardships described in this episode's opening song. What does this song have to do with today's episode? Stay tuned to find out. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you're definitely familiar with the singer of the opening song. His channel is linked in the descriptions of the episodes his music is featured in, but if you haven't checked him out already, he uploads videos of himself singing folk songs. I've invited him on the show today to tell you a bit more about what he does. It is with great pleasure that I introduce today's guest, Catfish Franklin.
Well, thank you for having me, Felix.
Before I start with the questions, I'd like to say that I love your channel. It's an excellent resource for public domain songs, you kick ass on the banjo, and I'm very grateful that you've allowed me to use your music on my show.
Oh, thank you. I sure appreciate that. It's a fun thing to do, and I'm glad you like it.
What got you into playing public domain folk songs?
Well, I've been a working musician since the last century, and banjo was not my first instrument, but I picked it up as a hobby a few years back. And, just through learning, finding songs that I could play on the banjo, I naturally started to get into old-timey music. That's what pulled me in. I really like the songs and the stories and the way that they're written. And they're so easy to play in most cases, but just so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Would you like to say more about your experience as a working musician?
I'm an electric bass player. I don't play gigs on the banjo. I've always just done that by myself. With the bass, I play a lot of rock and roll.
When you say rock and roll, that makes me think of Elvis and the Beatles, 50s and 60s kind of rock. Is that what you meant, or were you talking about something else?
Yeah, I'd say it's more 60s, 70s rock, maybe. I've played in so many bands over the years. Right now, my current bands are The Savage Kind, which is a garage rock trio, power trio, and The Griddle Kids, which is a folk rock power trio. But I've dabbled in almost everything over the years.
I see. I assumed that when you got into playing songs on the banjo, you probably had some expectations about what you were going to find. How did your actual experiences compare with those expectations?
Really, I didn't expect there to be so many songs that were so awesome. When I was a youngster, I never really gravitated towards old-time music. But as I got into it with the banjo, I started finding so many cool songs, and that's one reason why I wanted to start a YouTube channel, because of just all these great songs, and it's a good way for me to archive them for myself so I don't forget them. And also it's turned out to be really nice for other people too. And I hadn't really noticed anyone that was just collecting songs. But as I started getting into it, I guess I just wasn't expecting it to be so rich of a song base.
Yeah, I definitely had a similar experience with researching public domain songs. There were some songs that were written in the 1890s and 1900s that have persisted in the public consciousness, and there were a lot more that didn't get recorded at the time they were written or have generally been forgotten. So there are a lot of hidden gems that I've seen. That's why I really like when people breathe new life into these old songs so that we can enjoy them now. What are some things you've learned in your research that you found very interesting or surprising?
Well, I guess in regards to the banjo, just how easy it is to play, really. I mean, anyone can play a 5-string banjo. And it's interesting because it's designed to make the most noise with the least amount of effort, and it's also designed in such a way that you don't have to know anything about music theory in order to play it. As far as the songs themselves, something I find interesting is how dark they can be. There's a lot of different types of moods, but some of them are just so dark. And they don't really sound like that a lot of the time. They'll sound happy. If you're not paying attention, you might not even notice that. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Something that I found interesting about popular music from the late 1800s and the 1900s and 1910s was that there were a lot of songs with sexual innuendos. A lot of people joke about how women in this time period weren't allowed to even show their ankles, so those songs don't really fit in with that perception that people have of that time period. Obviously, their lyrics weren't as direct as modern songs by, say, Doja Cat, but it's still pretty interesting in my opinion.
Well, one of the reasons, in my opinion, why that came out in music back then was because it was the only way you could express those things. You couldn't just say them outright. What makes those songs so cool is that you had to show it instead of saying it.
Yeah. In the New Year's episode I released, the last song was called All Alone, and it was sung by Ada Jones. I didn't notice this until after I uploaded the episode, even though I've heard this song numerous times, but there's a part where she says, "We'll have lots of," and then she cuts herself off by saying, "Hurry up and get here, honey."
That's just good writing, man. Good songwriting.
Has playing folk songs on your channel changed how you look at music and history?
That's a good question. I mean, in a way, doing something different changes your perspective. As far as history, I don't know if it's really changed what I thought about it, but I'm starting to have a better understanding of it, at least musically. Just patchworking all these songs together, and I'm learning to see how they've influenced music that came later on. And I'm not steeped in this in my family history or anything like that, so I'm just finding a lot of these songs and going through them as I go. So really, I guess it's just more of a better understanding.
What's your favorite song that you found and recorded?
There are two, actually. Starving to Death on a Government Claim. That song is just so funny to me. That's kind of my favorite one that I found because I found it in an interesting way. It's not on a lot of lists of folk songs either, and you don't really hear it around. The other one is My Ozark Mountain Home. That one is just beautiful.
Interesting to see your perspective on that. I really like The Cat Came Back. That one was hilarious. Do you have any upcoming projects we should look out for?
Well, I've got a lot of good songs lined up on the slate. I just recently put out a video of going to a location related to some songs, and I'm hoping to bring in a couple of my musician buddies for some of the songs just to spice things up a little bit.
That sounds pretty interesting, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you have in store for us. Anyway, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was really fun.
That's all the time we have for today's episode. Be sure to check out the description for a link to Catfish Franklin's YouTube channel. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next time for more free IP. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends.